But yeah, that's what we did in English courses. We analyzed literary texts. We identified metaphors. We learned about the underlying mechanisms of literature, which in my mind should have the same priority as music appreciation. It balances you out as a person, but we spend too much time on it. And I would argue that in English courses in high school, you should be developing an understanding of logical fallacies, and then be able to give an example of these logical fallacies, and then read like the opposing viewpoint series on different contemporary issues, like issues that are in the news today, like gun control. All right, I want you to read three different like editorials on gun control, and I want you to identify logical fallacies in these texts.
That makes sense. Like, look at three different articles from people who are extremely for gun control and people who are extremely against gun control.
Someone who's in the middle, and go out and also find three other viewpoints on your own. I don't care if it's a book. I don't care if it's a debate on C-SPAN. I would encourage you to look at a debate on C-SPAN. Debates are great because then usually debaters hold each other accountable. And then I want you to analyze them. I want you to I want you to identify any logical fallacies. I want you to fact check their arguments. Say, do they contradict themselves at any point? The arguments. And you want the students to learn, at least by the time they graduate from an undergraduate school, how statistics can be used and abused. Like the old saying goes, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. People can manipulate statistics in order to have a public that's not easily manipulated by lobbyists and politicians. You want people who can say, okay, let me see that study, and then look at it and say, well, these statistics are all, this is a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah,
this study doesn't suggest that at all. They took this, and
even
researchers can do that. Huh?
Even the way it's worded. Like if I told you right now there was my friend who just got her cancer treatment, there is a 12 to 15% chance that her cancer will come back. Yeah. And when I heard that, it scared me.
Yeah.
And if she had said, oh, there's like a 87 to 85% chance I'll live the rest of my life and never get sick again from the cancer, I would have been, oh, that's good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it was the way she phrased it. Yeah.
It's the way it was
emphasized.
Yes, there's emphasis. And even if she said that 15%, that 85% chance she's going to be fine, it would take me a minute to go, wait, that
means there's a 15% chance that
it's going to come back. Yeah. And even then, before it came back, the doctor said she would only live to be about 30. She would be lucky to live about that. That was before they knew it came back. So.
Unfortunately, my dad has well, we don't know if he still has a prostate cancer. They did the surgery, then he's done the radiation, but we can't determine whether the cancer metastasized because this is kind of off topic, but he can't get a CAT scan done because he has a hormone patch in his body. The CAT scan is nuclear radiation. Whatever the case may be, the hormone patch interferes with the CAT scan's ability to determine whether or not there are cancerous cells within the body. And that's the only way you could determine whether the cancer had metastasized at a molecular level, is through a CAT scan. So we won't know until October whether he still has cancer in his body, because nothing comes up on an X-ray, but there could be very small amounts of cancer, and all his blood tests are good and everything, but we're still not completely sure.
There could be that just tiny little cell.
There could be a few couple cells there still like holding on for life that survived the radiation. We don't know.
I think that's what happened with my friend.
Yeah. Because sometimes, you get rid of 80-90% of the cancer, but then that 10% is still there, and it starts metastasizing again, and you never know. But there's a lot of factors that go into that. I don't want to get off topic. I'm thinking about all the
I apologize for putting you off topic.
No, I want to talk. Now I want to talk about cancer, but we'll just talk about cancer. I don't think, because I'm going to healthcare administration, the food that when someone has cancer, there really should every doctor, every oncologist should bring in a dietitian and provide the patient with an anti-carcinogenic diet. Because we have studies that show that certain foods severely decrease the help with reducing that actually cause autophagy in cancer cells that cause cancer cells to die off. Like green tea. They've done thousands of studies on green tea that show that at a molecular level, and they've done double-blind placebo studies, they've done all sorts of mechanistic studies that show that green tea helps to fight off cancer. And if a cancer patient drinks green tea, they have a better survival rate. There's also, fruits, vegetables. If you eat a balanced diet, you have a better chance of surviving cancer, and of course, preventing it as well, than someone who eats the standard American diet.
Yeah, my friend, she's Canadian, the one who has cancer is Canadian, and unfortunately it was in her stomach, so it affected the way she could eat.
Yeah.
And now that she got her treatment, she's going to be able to start eating normally again.
Yeah.
Quote unquote. And for a while there, she couldn't really eat anything. She had to eat Jello.
Yeah.
And she has to eat just really limited amount of what she can actually eat to not negatively affect her stomach and screw it up.
Yeah, if I was a doctor and if I was an oncologist, first thing, one of the blood tests I would do would be a full vitamin and mineral panel. Because I would want their vitamins and minerals to be at the optimum levels. Because we know there are certain milligrams per milliliter in the blood that we want of the different vitamins and minerals for the body to function optimally. Is nutrition going to cure the cancer? No. Am I one of those kooks that say, nutrition is all you need to cure cancer? No, there's no cure for cancer. What I'm saying is that
not yet, at least.
Not yet, at least. There will be in the future. Hopefully in the near future. But the case is that it increases your chances substantially. And in concert with radiation therapy, and if necessary, chemotherapy, and other traditional forms of technology-based treatments, for cancer, we should be putting a greater emphasis on, the cancer patient's diet, because it can increase their chances of survival tenfold. And that is not exaggeration.
That is
a fact.
Statistics for that? I don't understand, but
I could pull up. I could list thousands of studies on the benefits. How high level the benefits about having optimum levels of vitamin C has on preventing and helping to ward off cancer. I can show you hundreds of studies on green tea showing you that on a cellular level that ECCG. I forget how to pronounce the full name of it. That antioxidant actually kills off cancer cells.
You're the expert here. You've done the research. Well, not expert, but
no one disagrees with this. You won't find a doctor or a dietitian or an oncologist that'll say that green tea will not help fight off cancer, because it's well known and it's well established. But not every oncologist, recommends an anti-carcinogenic diet. They don't recommend drinking green tea. But if you want to have the best chance of surviving cancer, you should do everything in your power you can to help ward off that cancer. You shouldn't just, do the chemotherapy or the radiation.
Do you think in order to fix that would be to train doctors to?
They don't study a lot of nutrition. They don't study the performance of nutrition, because pharmaceutical companies give the greatest donations to medical schools, and they have a lot of influence in our medical schools, unfortunately. And I've run into this problem in trying to get the alpha-stim thing I was talking about. I made another video about this. It's a therapeutic device that treats insomnia, and it's FDA approved for the treatment of anxiety, depression, and insomnia. It's most widely used by the U.S. military. There's been over 8 million treatments. This is approved for the treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder. And there's been zero serious side effects reported in 30 years. It's the most widely researched therapeutic device in the world. And yet, and there's been studies showing that it is, if not at the same level, in many cases, it is significantly better than antidepressants, better than benzodiazepines, better than trazodone, better than these prescription medications at treating these mental disorders. And yet, it's not well known among the medical establishment. If you ask the average medical school student or the average doctor about cranial electrical stimulation, they'll have no idea what you're talking about.
How much is one of those machines? How much roughly? How much would one of the machines that does the
If you wanted to buy it outright,
yeah, for just a low end user, like the end user, like a
the cheapest one you can get is a CES Ultra. You would need a prescription for it, and I believe it's $300. And
is there any non-prescription models, or do you have to have a prescription?
Well, in other countries you don't need a prescription. In this country you do. But it's, you really shouldn't need a prescription for it, because there are no reported serious adverse side effects. There's never been a severe adverse side effect with the use of the alpha stim, because it emits, as I explained to you before, it emits electrical activity at the level of static, even lower than static electricity. You can barely even feel it. It's like a tingling. And what it does, it puts your brain waves, they've shown this through fMRIs and through EEG studies, into an alpha brainwave state, which is a calm state, and allows you to be calmer, more collected. It turns off the fight or flight mode. It lowers your cortisol levels. It puts you in a state where you're calm and relaxed. So that's why it works, and it relieves anxiety. That's why it works for depression, anxiety, insomnia, and post-traumatic stress disorder. It puts you in that brainwave state instead of into the treatment state where you are in your fight or flight mode. People who have post-traumatic stress disorder are constantly in a state of tension, because in warfare you have to be. If you're sleeping and someone sneaks up on you, you need to immediately pull out your gun and stop in about 0.2 seconds and shoot them. And a lot of times, I've talked to people. A lot of nurses, their husbands are military. They'll end up having to sleep in different beds because they'll come back from Iraq, and their husband will wake up in the middle of the night screaming and thrashing around, and they'll end up attacking the wife, punching her in the face, and will put her in a chokehold, because that's just the reflex they develop from being in 5 tours in Iraq.
I understand.
Their brain has adapted
to wired to protect themselves
in a battlefield situation, because the mind is very adaptable. But you need, in order to, there's a lot of different ways. You can use cognitive behavioral therapy, but the alpha stim is also very helpful in treating post-traumatic stress disorder, because on a neurological level, it puts you in a calmer state.
I have a question. Do you ever think one of those will just, as you said, just become commercially available to anybody without a prescription? And do you think
not if the FDA has anything to do with it? I've watched the FDA hearings, and who are the people at the head of the FDA?
They would be the medicine companies, wouldn't they?
Big Pharma. It's a revolving door. The same with the USDA. It's the same with the Securities and Exchange Commission. It's the same with most of the regulatory bodies in the United States. Most of the heads of our regulatory bodies are former executives at the very corporations that they are now regulating. So what they do is, they do a pretty good job of, once in a while they put out a press release. They make it look like they're doing their job, but really, most of the time they're covering things up. But if something's too big, like the financial crisis, and they can't cover it up, then they give lip service to holding people accountable, They make it look like they're going to put people in prison, but what happened with the last financial crisis? There was all this fraud, admitted fraud. A bunch of executives at Goldman Sachs issued more fraudulent mortgage-backed securities. They committed fraud. I mean, that's not even a regulation. That's a simple law. If you commit fraud, that is a crime, and you don't even need the SEC, any prosecutor, the attorney general could go again of any of who had jurisdiction of that could prosecute one of the Goldman Sachs executives for that. But none of them were charged with fraud, despite having committed fraud.
Even then,
because you had this revolving door between the big corporations and the government.
yeah, and it's even then, American prisons. There's like you have.
There's resort prisons.
Basically,
There's some prisons for the people that do end up like the.
Like people who commit fraud, they're not going to go to the.
They don't go to maximum security prison. Oh no! I forget who's the guy. Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan interviewed this guy who came out of prison. He was sent to prison because of the steroids thing that they got back in the 80s. I forget the guy's name, but he went to prison for shooting up his athletes with steroids. Olympic athletes, U.S. athletes. I mean, come on, what athletes in the Olympics aren't on some sort of illegal drugs? But anyway, he ended up getting caught because he got a little wild, he got a little crazy, and they got at least make it look like they're holding people accountable.
Yeah.
So once in a while, someone will go to prison. He went to prison for 2 years. He came out. He went on the Joe Rogan's podcast. Joe Rogan is the commentator for UFC. He's also a stand-up comedian and a social commentary guy. He's like an alternative media guy. He has like 5 million followers. Like he has the biggest I think the biggest podcast on iTunes. And he interviewed this guy and he said, yeah, I went to prison for about 2 years. It was freaking awesome. There was absolutely no fences. And they had female security guards there that were basically porn stars. They were hookers. And the first thing when he came in there was a pool there were basketball courts, there was a lounge with like real nice leather couches in there. It was all like Wall Street guys and like the people that had political connections. He even named the prison. So I don't know what happened with that. He named the prison. He said, and people would just like get a ride. They would get picked up from the prison, go out for a couple hours, and then come back.
As long as you're back by check-in.
Yeah, that wasn't their sentence. They're not supposed. That wasn't their parole. They were just like.
They just walked out.
And like the head of the prison, he knew that's why he was there. Like he showed him around. He said, you like her? You like that girl over there? That security guard, huge breasts, beautiful body. And he was like, yeah, she's gorgeous. He's like, $2,000. What do you mean $2,000? He's like, tonight, you want her to come in your room? $2,000. This guy was blown away. I'll have to put that in the annotations. I'll put a link in this video to that podcast to this guy. He was in the news for about 3 years when we prosecuted him. It was a big scandal in the Olympics for the U.S. Olympic team because he and a lot of his athletes ended up going to prison for a while. But people want to think that the fact is, okay, every Olympic athlete, every professional athlete is on some sort of performance-enhancing drug. You can't be in the NFL and not be on steroids, unless you have some sort of gorilla genetics still in you, and you're just some sort of genetic freak. And there are people out there who are just genetically super gifted with amazing strength and
talent,
and talent who are just like having just like incredible genetics. that are almost superhuman. For the most part, if you're going to look at an NFL player, they're all on some sort of roids, and to pretend that they're not is just the height of ignorance.
It's like I love looking at pictures. You compare athletes from like 50 years ago or 20 years ago
To athletes today.
to athletes today. You look at them. You look at the top weightlifters of then, and then you look at somebody who you see, hey, that looks like somebody who you'd see walking down the street. You wouldn't know they could lift, a ton, half a ton.
Exactly.
And then you look at them now, and they look like they've been carved out of a statue.
Yeah. They don't even look real.
They
They
don't.
look like they were drawn in a cartoon.
Yeah. Like they're the person who, if they punch you, you expect your internal organs to just blow out.
Yeah, they look like they don't even look real because they've taken the human body and they've taken their testosterone levels and their growth hormone levels and pumped them up 1,000 times more than you would naturally ever see in the wild.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible how big these guys can get.
One of the best fixes, one of the fixes I heard for sports for that would be to create 2 leagues of the sports. To create one league where nobody's on anything at all, like completely legit, and it's just pure skill and pure whatever you work for. And then another league where you can take the steroids or the enhancers, and there would be 2 subdivisions of that. You could have one where it's completely unrelated, and you can push your body to
The absolute
very
maximum.
Yes, whatever
As
the
much as you
maximum
want.
you can take.
Yeah.
Before your body becomes so muscular you can't walk.
Yeah.
Or where
Well,
you
wouldn't
become
do that if you're a professional athlete.
Yeah. Or you become so your body basically shuts down because you're too good.
Well, yeah, you run into you
You
have
run
to be
into the
careful
gut.
because you can run into organ failure problems. The people who are they're on designer steroids. They're on like the best, most advanced stuff. Like that's out there. They're on the best steroids. Like the doctors that are working and the pharmacists that are working alongside these professional athletes are geniuses. They're always designing them. They're testing their blood levels daily. They're making sure everything. They're checking their heart like every month. They're looking at all their vital signs. They're doing all sorts of blood tests. They're looking at all. They're looking for any sign that anything is going wrong, and because they make so much money that they're like a freaking B-2 bomber. You got to have engineers on that B-2 bomber, making sure that B-2 bomber when it goes off to fly, everything, all the parts are going to work. You can't have an oil leak or whatever. You can't have any problems with thrusters. Everything has to be good to go. You got to check, just like you would check your car via the computer system, see if there's any problems going wrong. That's how they treat the professional athletes. They look at every single piece of data they can get and make sure that when they're giving them the steroids, that what they're giving them won't come up in the test that they're doing, and they cycle on and off, and they design the cycle of the steroids based on when they get tested because it's on a regular schedule, and they also make sure that that the hormones aren't getting imbalanced. And that when they come off this testosterone, they have to go into post-cycle therapy and make sure that their estrogen levels don't go out of control.
Yeah.
Because what you see, the problem with steroids isn't when you see roid rage, it's not from the testosterone. So what you do when you're on steroids is you take a shitload of testosterone for about 6 to 8 weeks, and then you take anti-estrogen for about 4 to 6 weeks. You come off the testosterone, you elevate your testosterone, and after that, you have a withdrawal. Your body, after having all testosterone, will naturally will have lowered its testosterone level, and as a result, your hormone level, your estrogen levels will skyrocket, unless you take something like aromatase, which is an anti-estrogen. So at the post-cycle therapy, that is, after you're done with testosterone, 6 to 8 weeks of just taking testosterone, you take the anti-estrogen to keep your estrogen levels down. Now, if you just take testosterone for 6 to 8 weeks and then don't take your anti-estrogen, you're gonna have mood swings, like a pregnant woman, except a pregnant woman that can destroy people with a single slap of their hand. You know, imagine
a fridge.
Imagine a pregnant woman. If you ever seen a very hormonally, you know, or a girl who just has very bad periods, but imagine her at 350 pounds and a man
with bulking arms,
with bulking arms, huge chest.
Yeah. That's you already want to mess with that guy, and then they're like,
it's not. Yeah, that's not testosterone. That's estrogen, because they didn't take enough anti-estrogen for the full-cycle therapy. Now the estrogen levels are through the roof, and they're having mood swings. That's where you see, that's the roid rage. Now, if you do your cycles correctly, like most of the cops do, a lot of cops, let's be honest about this, if you're on a SWAT team, or if you're in the military, a lot of people in the military are also on it. But come on, you're in the military.
You would have to be.
You kind of, I mean, you don't have to be, not every one of them.
I mean, you don't have
100%. It's not like professional athletes, but I want to say most of them even, but a good portion of the people in the U.S. military, you know, have used performance-enhancing drugs, and they kind of have to.
I mean,
you're in a combat situation. You need to be strong enough to carry it like 120 pounds of equipment on your back for 10 miles
in the burning heat.
In the burning heat for 16 hours without eating while getting shot at. Now, if you're not super athletic, you're gonna freaking die. So if you're not,
I would die after an hour.
You die after an hour, right?
I was standing out in the heat because I was helping with this thing, right? And I was out in the heat for a couple hours, right?
Yeah.
Wearing a t-shirt, and I was dying after a couple hours.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine carrying like full body armor, and then having like 120 pounds of stuff on my back with the 50 pounds of armor, and then trudging around for miles on my feet, carrying a gun, looking back and forth to make sure I don't get shot at, and then looking at the ground to make sure I don't walk over a bomb.
And all that at once. It's like, I mean,
I'm surprised.
I have no problem with people taking them if they need them.
I'm fine with people. In my opinion,
they need them, you know.
In my opinion, they should. I don't care if you take them, as long as you don't take whatever you need to not physically harm other people, like the anti-estrogen.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you don't do anything like sports where it's quote unquote not allowed.
Yeah, because you're doing a contract. If you're like, especially if you're in high school, you really shouldn't be taking any of that because your body's still developing, and you know, when you take steroids, you're already taking years off your life. If you do it when you're a teenager, when your body's hormones are still in development and your brain is still developing, and you use steroids at that age, you're going to take decades off your life, and you're really messing up because your body's still developing.
I mean, I know people who, like my friend, and I have another friend who's also just as sick as the one who just cured their cancer, and she actually went to the hospital the same day my cancer friend went out. But where just naturally they've lost decades on their life, both of them. My other friend, she was born with a bad heart.
Yeah.
She it's basically stopped working at about 14. At 16, she got a heart transplant. Now she's having heart issues again.
Oh no.
With the transplant. And I care about her, but she's probably going to be dead by 30.
Yeah, but they're working on artificial hearts.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, you have to hope there's still a chance because they're working. They already have, like, they don't have a full robotic heart, but they have something. They have pumps, artificial pumps that they can do for the right side of the heart. They haven't been able to do it for the left side yet, or it might be the other way around. It used to be a machine this big. Now they have artificial components that if you have like bad valves, you can put the machine into your chest. And it was done just last year. They successfully did it, and the batteries like this big, it's right on the outside, and it was like 2 batteries or whatever. And the guy has been alive like 3 months, and he was having heart. He was on the edge of heart failure, but they did the surgery with this artificial heart. But they're also in the process of developing hearts out of your own stem cells. The body does not reject the heart.
I'm actually curious to see how not only the medical world uses that, but how the medical/political world uses that. Like the companies, how they're going to be affected by that.
The FDA is going to get in what? Because a lot of times with experimental things like that, if someone's terminal and there is experimental medication, and they want to try the experimental medication like just because at the very least they're contributing to see whether it actually works, and it's like their last hope. Like at least give them a shot, you know. But I saw this whole documentary about these patients who were terminally ill, and their doctor said, well, there's one thing that possibly might work. It's in development, hasn't been FDA approved yet, and they're doing experimental trials on it right now. I'll see if I can get it for you, and then he'll call the FDA and say, no, it's experimental and you can't use it. And the doctor say, but this patient is terminal, and you know it looks very promising. At the very least, it's worth a shot. And the FDA will say, no, absolutely not. You cannot do that. Because, you know, and I believe you have the right to your own body.
I agree with that.
It's like if you are terminally ill and you want to take an experimental medication, something that is not proven yet, but might possibly, maybe it does work. We don't know yet.
Yeah, like if there's a 10% chance to make you better, and then there's like a
90% chance it'll make you worse. Well, you're going to be dead either way.
If I was going to say 90% chance to make you worse, I'd say if there's like an 80% chance it does nothing for your case, and there's a 10% chance it gets you better, and then 10% chance it's going to make you worse.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to say, oh, you know, don't use that because you know it could kill you.
Well, there's been recorded cases of this. Let's see.
Obama's 4 horsemen. What? I don't even want to know.
Where's that at?
It was a pop-up ad. You close it out.
Yeah, well, anytime you go to a news site. Blah, 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 blah. Blah, blah.
It's almost scary. The best...
I want to read about medication that was... Well, anyway, I'll put a link to it there. I'll attach a link when I upload this to a video that shows a case in which it was a medication that was in development and that eventually was approved. And patients who were terminally ill asked to use this drug before it was FDA approved because they wanted to try it because it was still in its early stages. But the FDA said, no, it still hasn't been approved yet, so you can't use it. And the patients said, well, we're terminally ill. And then those patients died. And then 3 or 4 years later, it turned out, yes, the medication was effective. And, you know, it did reverse disease. It did treat the disease effectively. So those people could have lived.
Yes.
Because they hadn't been approved yet. But the patient was terminally ill and it was 3 or 4 years away from approval. And said, listen, let me try out the drug. It looks promising. At the very least, it gives me some hope that I could live. And then 3 or 4 years later, it's FDA approved, empirically proven that it did work, and saving hundreds of thousands of people's lives. But we don't think about, what about all those patients that were terminally ill that requested that medication because they had nothing else worked, and the FDA said, no, you don't own your own body. We decide what you can put in your own body. I'm against the whole war on drugs. I say, what did Portugal do? They decriminalized all drugs, the possession of all drugs. It's a misdemeanor to have them on you, but you don't get charged with anything. You have to come to court and they give you a slap on the wrist and say you shouldn't be doing this in public. But in perhaps your own home, you're allowed to do whatever. You can do heroin, you can
as long as you're
marijuana. You can't do it in public. But if you're caught with drugs on you, as long as it's not like a kilo of cocaine.
Hold on, let me park my truck, it's full of cocaine.
If you have a small amount of drugs on you, it's not a criminal offense. They don't even fine you. You have people outside smoking blunts.
I mean, I agree that.
Did drug use go up? Did drug use go up?
A little bit.
No, it didn't go up. It actually
went down?
Use actually went down for everything except marijuana. Marijuana use.
The crime rate actually depleted by like half in the past 5 years. You get caught with like how you were saying.
Well, you want being on video?
It's fine. You just get, in all reality, like they completely decriminalize. Like I said, you get like a kilo of coke in your car. All you get is rehab time. That's all they give you. Which, in my personal opinion, is great. I mean, like, they treat it as a medical issue.
Which is what it is.
Which is what it is.
It's a medical issue. It's not a criminal issue.
Exactly. If you're addicted to something such as an opiate, like heroin or pills or even like a speed of some type, all you're going to be thinking about is your next fix. So if they put them in rehab rather than prison system, you're not wasting the country's money on menial bullcrap.
Yeah, exactly.
And especially in rehab, you're more likely to not go, hey buddy, can you help me get my fix?
Yeah, exactly.
Hey buddy, you know a couple dealers on the outside. Can you tell me when I can get out?
Or you can just be worried about just getting clean and not have to worry about other stuff, such as, if you're in prison trying to get clean, you're also thinking about, well, am I going to get, shanked today? Am I going to be also pretty much afraid for your life?
You're also talking to criminals who are violent criminals.
Yeah.
And it's a school for criminals because you're talking to people who robbed houses, who raped people, who murdered people, and people are affected
it's
by
a
the
negative
people.
kind of networking.
It is.
It's a negative.
It is.
You put them in a negative social circle, and it's a career for criminals. And you'll have drug dealers.
You have people who went in for maybe like they got 3 years possession for having like a half an ounce of weed, and then they come out with all this knowledge of how to like do tax evasion and deal with
tax
board
evasion.
types
I
of
like
drugs.
that.
How to get away with
Well,
it.
think about that. You got guys going in jail for like 30 years for stealing like for like 3 months, pretty much, for stealing like millions of dollars, embezzling millions of dollars from their companies. And then you got a guy in there for like 3 years, because he was caught with a few joints. Like it really doesn't make any sense.
The best part about that is I saw a picture of it was like two different news articles, right, on a page, and one of them said, man embezzles and steals like $20-something million, gets like 2 years in jail. Man steals $100 from a store, feels bad, goes back to the store and gives back the money, got like 20 years in jail.
Yeah, it's pretty disgusting. I mean, the judicial system
it sounds absurd, but these cases are freaking true.
They're being slandered, and it's kind of like not right. You know what I mean? Like, and the fact is,
kind of not right.
It's all not right.
It defies any moral sentiment that any human being from any background, from any culture,
and
it's absurd.
And I almost want to say put the blame on the news system. So rather than putting those cases to light where somebody steals $20 million and gets 2 years in jail, and somebody else steals $100 and gets 20 years in jail, they go on more situations where like what was the name of that girl who killed herself because she was bullied?
Oh,
that you know who I'm talking about.
I don't remember her name, but I know you're talking about. They made a whole huge thing out of it.
Everybody made a huge thing about it, and then nobody remembers her name. And it was such a tragedy, and she was a relatively good-looking person.
Yeah.
But if that had been some fat ugly bitch,
no one would care. Exactly.
It would be like, oh, that fat bitch killed herself. One less man.
Or just like any average like person that's kind of like lives their life behind the scenes. You know what I mean? They don't forcefully put themselves out in the public eye.
If a beauty queen goes freaking missing, it is a 24/7 news channel.
You'll see SWAT cars.
You'll see helicopters everywhere. If she looks like Miss America, it's like Fox News, CNN, MSNBC. They're gonna be like, oh, this beautiful woman, where'd she go? She's been kidnapped. No one knows where. Okay, it was an average. It was like a.
It was just minorities too.
It was just like a little black girl who wasn't like who couldn't be the cover model of some like magazine. you know, that's like the back pages of the fucking of the local newspaper. Nobody
Yeah,
cares.
yeah. I mean, the media always has to push things up front with any issue. They always backtrack and like retrace their steps with stuff. I mean, it's with any situation. If you watch like any of the major news networks, whether it's Fox,
I don't
CNN,
even
or
watch the
anything,
news anymore.
it's disgusting because I mean,
They cater to
When
the
you-
lowest
when-
common denominator.
it's not even that. It's like
They make it worse.
when you watch the news, despite it being, you know, such animosity all the time,
Yeah.
it's just always bringing you down. It's the fact of like when anybody does decide to watch the news and you turn the news on and your first reaction is you kind of want to know what's going on in the political world because that's what the news should mainly be focusing on, and the news does focus on that stuff, but they do it in such like a coy and sly way. It just
Yeah.
They
it
twist
sucks.
it to
They twist it.
show your
Three
opinion.
reporters from CNN quit over the last year because they did extensive research on certain political things that were happening within the Obama
They
administration.
did real research.
And when they got back, they were told they had to read something else, so they said we quit because it's bull.
This is not.
It's bull.
This
They're-
is bull. This is an agenda you're
Yeah.
trying to do.
Yeah.
And it's not the real facts. Because they threw out people to do real journalism. You had Amber Lyons, who was doing real journalism. I forget what free country she was in, but she was told by CNN made a whole documentary about corruption within a dictatorship which we were allied with.
Yeah.
And she did it and was aired on CNN International once. And then she was told that would never be aired again, and that she had to stop investigating all this corruption,
Yep.
and that she was not allowed to ever talk about it again, and she better keep her mouth shut,
Yep.
because our diplomats are very pissed. Because we have
Trust me, I know.
our dictatorships which we like. You know, we put Saddam into power. You know, we put in the Shah.
But that's even the scary thing, like how few of the
If
American
they're-
public even like know that the U.S. is actively and intensively involved in like, you know, programming dictatorships. It's like that's just one
set
thing
up
on a small
dictatorships.
scale that like our government has
When's the
been
last
doing.
time we set up a successful
I mean,
democracy?
Chavez just died last night, and now we're probably going to be all about Venezuela for
Yeah.
the next couple weeks.
He's gonna try to put our. It's not. It's like I don't know what the hell they're thinking. The last time we were successful was with Japan. We replaced the dictatorship with a working democracy. It's the
Yeah.
last time the United States, our foreign policy, was successful. in
Didn't when
taking-
we did that, we basically leave the emperor in charge anyway of Japan?
What we made them do is go on radio and say to all of the people of China, "I am not a god."
Yeah.
Because the Japanese people believed that their
Their
emperor
was God.
was God,
Like a living
and they
being.
said, and they made him, they arrested him, and they said, "You need to go on the radio right now and tell every person in this country right now that you were not a god." And he did it, and then they said, "Okay, you got, you know, they set their base up. We set up our base up in Japan, and over the years, they set up a democracy. Now, Japan is pretty much a pretty decent country to live in now.
It's a great country to live
Where's
in.
any other case where we did that?
Well, we did that in Iraq.
What do you mean? We did it in Iraq.
Well, they pretty much worsened Saddam. I mean, the people.
It's
in
worse
the-
than was under
I
Saddam.
know that, but I mean,
The
it's
disease, raises disease. Women are no longer being educated. Women are being educated. There were colleges, there were schools. Women
In the Middle East, you're talking.
They didn't have to wear
Yeah.
shawls anymore under Saddam. The poverty has increased tenfold since we invaded.
Oh yeah, trust me, I'm not saying that I agreed with like the taking out.
But I'm
Saddam,
saying,
but
like,
I don't personally believe we had
Hypothetically,
any.
it was possible to go in there, kick out Saddam, and put in a successful democracy where people had a Bill of Rights, and maybe even
Oh,
separate.
yeah, but I mean-
hypothetically possible, we could have created a better state of affairs. I'm not completely non-interventionist. Like, I'm a libertarian, but I can see the possibility of, okay, you have a crazy dictator.
Possible that they would do that, or possible that
It's
it's possible to actually like happen for them to do it.
It's possible it was possible for us to go in there, but if you look at Operation Iraqi Freedom, what we did when we first invaded, it was like it was designed by the cast of Jersey Shore.
Yeah, it's
The
all
first
it was
time,
pretty
for our
much-
invasion,
Yeah.
we bombed hospitals, we bombed schools.
When they bombed Baghdad, they didn't really have
There
any.
wasn't targeting.
There was no, yeah, exactly.
The
There was no
strategy was
targets.
not
It was
targeted.
kind of just like a sporadic.
Children were being killed left and right. There was the communication between the different.
Kill everyone. We'll make them free.
Squads. Yeah, we'll make them free later. It was not a tactical invasion. And this goes back to what I'm talking to the problems with education is that you could say it's corruption or whatever. I think it's a lack of high order thinking skills on the part of our generals and our sergeants and everything
most
else.
definitely. I mean,
because the way we teach people is this is how we teach people. I'm the authority figure. This is a textbook. Memorize the information. Okay, now recite it back to me. It's not. Look at all this information from all these different sources. All right, now I want you to critically evaluate them. I want you to identify any logical fallacies in there. I want you to
Tell me why that happened.
Yeah, exactly. I want you to look at all this different knowledge. I want you to synthesize it, and then I want you to come to a nuanced understanding of this issue.
but the problem is,
People aren't trained to do that.
with a situation like that, when you have, when your government pretty much does that, like what's your name, man?
Ben.
Ben, I'm Chaz.
Chaz, nice to meet you.
Mike?
Ben Rosenswag, Chaz
Chaz Fowles.
Okay.
When you have a government that does what Ben says, and it's like textbook, memorize this, such as like if, when a government drops off laws and they say, like, for example, the United States, we've had our Constitution, for the past couple hundred years, and to us, like, if you love living here, if you love being an American and really take part in the ideologies that were founded on this country, like, freedom of speech, your right to bear arms, like, they should all still be dear to you, and in all forms, because, that's been your rights. I mean, the Constitution doesn't give you your natural rights. You've had your natural rights since birth. Whether it's any deity you believe in, whatever religion, Mother Nature, whatever you want to say. But I mean, the Constitution as your American right, you still have that. It's still your identity as American for your laws here.
Yeah.
And the problem with what's going on now, and you can connotate this as, being failure to the Obama administration, or in my personal opinion, this has been going on since the Bush administration, because it's been a whole slew of just horrible problems. But you have our government now pretty much taking up your Constitution and just tearing it up in front of your face. And the problem is most Americans don't know, because, like I was saying a few minutes ago, you go on, you go watch like Fox and CNN, and they put things on there for like a second, and then they take them off. Yahoo, I mean, I've known about this for a while. If you read alternative news sites like InfoWars, or even just go and just Google stuff, like read the Huffington Post or Yahoo or any newspaper that you can get a hold of, other people will print stuff, and because other editors will allow it, whereas national TV won't, because the national TV media doesn't have a say all the time. Yahoo finally printed last night the article about how Obama pretty much has the authorization to assassinate any American citizen he feels. That's if he feels that you're a threat. I mean, when the Patriot Act came out, they said it didn't have an expiration date. Well, it had an expiration date. And what they did back in 2011 was Obama, without telling anybody, signed the National Defense Authorization Act. And what that pretty much is just an extension of the Patriot Act. Anything you post on Facebook, your cell phone, text messages, phone call, like, they're listening. Even if you really don't think so, even if it sounds silly.
It's all in a database.
It's all in a database. And the thing is, like, they build, if they think that you're in any activities at all, like, my best friend, his brother's house got raided in Philadelphia because he's a radical activist. He's a punk kid, he's a radical activist. But he actually, just because he went to 2 days of Occupy Philadelphia, and he participated in, a different couple of, like, numerous protests, there's a law now saying that if there's a government official, like if Obama were to come here to Cape May County, and he's in Wildwood, let's say, I don't know, and he's hypothetically, and he's staying in a hotel. If you don't like what has been going on, and you want to, talk about some things, and you want to have a protest outside his hotel, he actually signed a law last May stating that you can't do that. Any place where there's CIA officials or Secret Service or a government official, you can't have the right to protest. Well, that completely goes against your First Amendment right. Congress says that you can't abridge that. So it just leaves you to think, like, I think laws like that where you can't protest, those are laws where they'll only use when they want to. But that's still scary, because, I mean, like, there's stuff that clearly has been, news happening all over the country you're not going to see here in the Philadelphia, Atlantic City area. Back this past summer, there was riots going on in Anaheim, California, because, with the National Defense Authorization Act, there's a bunch of stuff in it. Like, there's so many sections. There's stuff that talks about, you know, healthcare, the Obamacare, the economy, and all that. But there's one section, 1021. If you look it up, read it, and it tells you all you need to know. And you'll find it through some of the articles too. But it gives the president the right to use military force on any American citizen when he thinks you're a threat. And, like, you know, I'm sure maybe a couple years ago you probably heard some weird guy, you know, you might have thought he was a conspiracy theory. Like, oh, they're building FEMA camps. Well, guess what? That, like, goes along with it. And I mean, there's tons of theories, and you can't prove theories.
Yeah,
but
I've read articles that if you do certain things, just various things, like little things, you just look up certain objects and check out certain books, that they get flagged, and you go on.
Yeah, and it's like, why would you flag me? It's like, I'm curious. I just want to look at it, even if I'm not doing extensive research. You're gonna just flag me for that.
You can get on another more higher lists. It's basically. The best image that comes to mind is you basically, like when you go from one list to the next evolution of the list and the higher list, and then you get onto the list where somebody goes, okay, well he's looked up this, and this. We can justify raiding his house, or not raiding his house, but monitoring him, looking at all his contacts.
Yeah, and that's the scary thing too now with the whole drone issue, like monitoring. And the fact is that's going to get so abused now because you can go you can go on Apple's website and buy a personal drone. Yeah. So it's like they're making it possible to be abused for that exact purpose.
And then
you can use a political weapon. Just say you have a journalist and he's a muckraker and he's investigating the Obama administration and there's some corruption.
Yeah.
Perhaps he's going really into depth into the fact that this is admitted, everybody knows it, that Goldman Sachs was his biggest #1 private contributor. He promised to hire a new lobbyist, and then he hired a former, Goldman Sachs lobbyist to be chief of staff at the Treasury Department. Let's say you have that journalist, and he's doing an in-depth investigation into that, and he got some internal documents, and he has some really solid stuff proving the corruption, the emails between Obama and this lobbyist, saying, "Oh yeah, I'll get you that job as long as you give me that money."
Yeah,
and perhaps if they have the technology, that thing gets flagged, they find out about it. Let's say that journalist smokes, weed. Let's say he is one of the, 30-40% of Americans. I have no clue. Large percentage of Americans that smoke marijuana recreationally. Or let's say he breaks any sort of law. Let's say there's one problem on his tax returns. Or they can even make crap up about him. Or they can just go to his house.
Yeah, exactly.
They could even.
They could plant drugs on him. They could say
it's not hard to just put drugs in somebody's house. Call the police and say, "Look, this person's been making a lot of noise."
Yeah.
To release pheromones to make it smell like there's drugs, so a cop can go.
Not even that. The cops themselves can do that because
is this drugs?
They don't need warrants anymore. Under the
NDAA,
it says like they don't need warrants.
I was just talking about this. Somebody who took a criminology course. They can monitor your cell phone text and your Facebook chats for 2 days. 2 days without getting warrant. That means they can, if they want to. Right now, if the cops wanted to hear what I'm saying on the phone, and listen to my text messages, they could do that for 2 days.
Yeah.
Just by typing, just going on the computer, type. Then they can bring it up. Any cop, any investigator can do this. The county gangs, gun and narcotics division could do this if they wanted to. Or any federal agency can do this.
ATF.
And for 2 days.
Yeah, anybody.
And for 2 days they can do this.
What's even scarier is
they don't even need a warrant. Then they need a warrant.
Yeah.
To continue monitoring.
No,
and they can do that for 5 years.
Not even within the monitoring aspect. Like, let's say you leave your house to come to class, and like it could be before or after that 2-day monitoring. They could be like, "Hey, he left his house." Boom. Go in. They can immediately search your house when you're not there without a warrant. Like, it gives them full permission, and that's the scary thing.